Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 127. I'm Dave Bryan from SteelersDepot.com, and sitting in for my co-host Alex Kozora today. It takes three people to replace Alex Kozora today on today's podcast. Three contributors. You will recognize the voices here. If not, we'll make sure to reintroduce everybody and go around here. But joined today by Tom Mead and Jonathan Heitritter and Daniel Kitchen, all contributors on SteelersDepot.com. So, gentlemen, welcome to this, I don't know what we'll call it, kind of a makeshift Terrible Podcast roundtable episode here. So with that, let's start with Tom Mead. Tom, why don't you say hello? And I think you've been with me the longest of the three on this call today. How long you been with me, and how did I come about finding you?
Hey, Dave, thanks for having us. I think I'm about 2.5 years now, and for me, you put up the bat signal on Twitter looking for people to contribute, and we connected, and I sent you some of my stuff, and you mulled over it for about 6 months, and then you finally gave me the okay to join. So, I joined right in January 2.5 years ago, right before the Senior Bowl.
Man, it seems like yesterday. It seems so recent. I don't even remember. But I'm glad to have you. Tom obviously puts out a lot of great stuff on the site, not only during draft season, but during the regular season as well too. I think Jonathan and Daniel both came in about the right time. So Jonathan, why don't we move to you? How long you been with me? How'd I find you? What do you want to be when you grow up?
All right. So I saw the post from both Alex and Dave on Twitter looking for other people to contribute for draft analysis for this past 2021 NFL draft kind of analysis time. So I kind of reached out. It's like I was doing my own analysis at the time. I sent it in to Dave. He reviewed it over with Alex. And then it was probably the wee hours of the night. It was like, all right, you're hired. You're going to be on. So then I just started trying to roll out as many draft analysis as I possibly could for the site. Currently, I just finished up my master's degree at Minnesota State University, Mankato. I have a background in exercise science and strength conditioning, but I also have my master's done in sport management. I've been to the NFL Combine. I've interviewed with several teams there, trying to get internship in player personnel and scouting. And it was looking really, really good until COVID hit, and then basically all the applications got shut down. So now I'm trying to get my way back in after everything's kind of opening up again. But until then, I'm just working with a strength conditioning route, hoping to break in over the next couple of years into actual player personnel scouting.
Yeah, judging by your avatar on Twitter, you're out of shape, man. You're Kevin Dotson out of shape. You're looking a little bit flabby there. So you gotta have to fix that. No, in all seriousness, we're glad to have Jonathan. Does great work. Hopefully when he does get maybe some more outside work, he'll continue to contribute to the site. I think hopefully that's the plan there. Daniel started off kind of doing some editing stuff on the site along with some pre-draft stuff. Daniel Kitchen, tell people a little bit about you and how you came about becoming a member of or contributor on the site.
I must be the special one because I didn't see a post or anything. Dave reached out to me directly one night. I've been in the media for about a half decade and been with the draft for several years, and I was at another website and then left about a month before the draft, and within 2 hours of me posting that I was done, Dave reached out with a message and said, "Hey, send me some of your stuff. I want to see what your reports look like." And then we had a chat the next day, and he said, "You're on. Let's go." And I've been draft guy ever since. All things, and I didn't stop when the draft ended. I'm still all draft all the time, in addition to editing and helping out everybody else too.
Good stuff so far too, as well too. We threw you right into the deep end of the pool, and it looks like you're still swimming there. So that's a good sign there. Obviously helping out with some interview stuff during mandatory mini camps and during the draft as well too. All right, so everybody has a quick introduction there of the three guys joining me. It's going to be a little bit, and this will make everybody happy listening. It's going to be a lot less me and a lot more of these three guys today as we kind of look at the 2021 Steelers and kind of get preview before the start of training camp later on in the month of July. Let's start first this way, and it's kind of a newsy topic, if you will, and just want to take the temperature of all three of you here. Devon Bush really been active on the Twitter machine these last 2 weeks or something like that. Really, I guess the best way to say is kind of erratic behavior there, and it doesn't look like, and you got to be careful with these things because he could very well have been hacked, and we might be viewing that. But I think the more I look at it, the less it kind of does look like Devon Bush has been hacked. Any of you want to offer up some thoughts on Devon Bush and his recent social media activity?
When we were waiting for you. Well, Dave, when we were waiting for you to join in earlier when we were trying to get this going on Zoom, I think Jonathan actually asked, what are the odds we talk about Devon Bush at some point today?
Well, you guys know me, and we got, we're responsible for kind of talking about this stuff. So, and this is, usually, off season, we don't have that much kind of news stuff to talk about here, but look, I think this is a little bit concerning here. Just and this once again assumes that we're not dealing with a hacked account here. It's erratic behavior. I think you guys would agree, and it is a little bit concerning to some degree, I would think.
Oh, no, I would definitely agree. And that's kind of one thing we're stemming off of, kind of like where it all initiated with kind of the TikTok issues with Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool. And everyone's trying to say, oh, you got to get a locker room away from them. Or at least J.J. Watts said that in a direct message tweet to Devon Bush. And, everyone was just kind of like, nah, fine, we're good. Don't worry about it. I mean, I'm going to still respect you. And I think another player, Chris Wormley or someone else got in on it too. But it was kind of one of those things where it kind of looked like they'd all made up, but that's kind of where it initiated. And now it's kind of gotten off to the point where there's just some tweets that just don't make any sense.
Right.
And it's kind of that's where you're kind of wondering, okay, if there's something going on in the man's personal life. Is it relationships going on there? Is it have to stem from coming back from his rehab, and he had a snag there potentially, and he's taking out his frustrations on Twitter? I mean, you're getting some reminiscent of what happened with AB when he went off the deep end. As much as I hate to say it, but he had a lot of very just the tweets didn't add up when AB went through it, and even with Lev Bell, and we're seeing kind of some controversy come out with him right now too. So it's kind of definitely concerning, like what you said, Dave. But it's nice because I don't really think anything's been really directed at the team thus far from what I've seen, and it looks like he has some support in the locker room overall. So I guess we'll just see where it goes going from there.
Yeah, look, I'm not, it's not any huge red flags, at least not yet. But I mean, just the erratic behavior. I mean, it definitely sticks out. And a lot of people are saying about the video about the cat and all like that, which I haven't even had the stomach to kind of watch that. I've heard people talk about it, and some stuff you just don't want. I'm not a horror movie fan either, and I just hate some of that stuff. I just don't even like to watch or look at, but I've obviously heard a description of that kind of stuff, and evidently he liked a video that let's just say he probably shouldn't have liked on there, and we'll just kind of leave it at that. But I mean, I guess just to some degree that this bears watching over the next couple of days, especially. And once again, let me quantify. I'm assuming that he's not hacked at this point. Now, he very well could be. This could obviously be somebody hacked his account and doing something there. It doesn't look like, as long as it's gone on and kind of the tweets that he sent out there. But Daniel, Tom, you want to add anything before we move on?
Yeah, I'd just say that it looks like along with what Jonathan said, maybe there's something else going on outside of the game. He just seems very confrontational with people, and I think Zach Banner even said he was going to take away his phone, which might be a good thing once they get to camp. It's all right with him on the outside.
Right. Daniel?
I don't want to speculate on what might be causing this because this is very out of the blue, very unordinary from someone who we don't really know as a social media person before this. So I'm guessing we're going to find out a lot more moving forward. The cat video was heinous. I didn't watch it because I'm not going to put myself through that, but he can't be doing stuff like that. You can't be doing stuff like that on social media when you're one of the young faces of the defense. So if it was a hack, no problem. If it was not, he's got to get a little bit of social media coaching, I think, from his teammates.
Right. And the funny thing about it is he's been on social media. I guess the thing that really makes this, that sticks out the most is, he's obviously been on social media and Instagram and Twitter for, heck, I think since the day he was drafted here. And then now all of a sudden we're seeing kind of this erratic behavior here. That's there's a red flag in there somewhere, I think, especially if this is not hack related. And man, I just put on Twitter this afternoon, and we're 10 months away from the Steelers having to make a decision on whether or not to pick up his 5th-year option. So and this is a very important season for Devon Bush coming back from that knee injury. Look, this guy's supposed to be the quarterback of your defense. Supposed to be a emerging team leader on the defensive side of the ball, and so far, the appearance on Twitter these last couple weeks seems like he's anything but that. So I guess that's a good place to leave it there. But we would be I would be remiss if we didn't at least address that at the top of the show, because I know if Alex was here, that'd be something that we'd be talking about as well too. All right, let's move forward into kind of the we've obviously spent a lot of time with you three already talking about the draft and the players that the Steelers drafted. Now let's kind of turn to look ahead more to the 2021 season here and start specifically on the offensive side of the ball here with you guys. Obviously, the big talk is the offensive line, the changes on the offensive line. What is the offensive line going to look like? What is the give me the biggest concern, maybe by player, by each one of you. And then maybe what a secondary concern is on this offensive line when you look at it at this point right now, heading into training camp. Which player maybe concerns you the most on the offensive line, and then give me kind of a secondary concern from there. Whoever wants to jump in first.
I'll go ahead and jump in first. So I've done a lot of reports in film rooms recently on a lot of the additions and moving of the offensive line. I did the report on Trey Turner before he was even signed to Pittsburgh, and I kind of highlighted, his ups and downs going through his 2020 season and a little bit before that. But one thing that kind of concerned me was Chukwuma Okorafor and his move back to the left side. And obviously that was the position that he played at Western Michigan before he came out. So hopefully the transition from the right to the left may be a more natural transition, kind of like what you and Alex have said in previous podcasts. But one thing that I've kind of noticed when I worked through the scouting report on Kendrick Green, when I evaluated Trey Turner's film, when I was looking through Kevin Dotson, when I did film the study on Zach Banner, we have a lot of guys that are very, very aggressive with whether it's to be their pass blocking stance or whether it be if they're firing out in the run game and actually looking to move people. I did not see that really a whole lot with Chukwuma Okorafor. I see a guy that's more pensive with his movement, and we'll kind of get an initial push, but then he doesn't really have that nasty to really drive a guy 5-10 yards plus downfield and block to the echo of a whistle like you would see with, say, a Zach Banner or say a Kevin Dotson. And that's something that kind of concerns me in terms of what Adrian Clem is trying to do. We might have a lot of guys that don't have a very cohesiveness together and don't have a lot of experience playing together. And that could be a problem, a secondary concern going forward in terms of just having a young new unit that hasn't played a whole lot together. But as long as you have a bunch of guys that are very aggressive and are buying into this physicality that Clem wants to have on offense, let alone on that offensive front, you're going to be able to generate more of a push up front than we probably were able to last season and over the last couple of years, where it just kind of seemed like we were just trying to get a body on a guy. We weren't really trying to drive anyone forward with that offensive line. So I could say confidently, just knowing the players themselves, that I think 4 of the 5 guys on that projected starting front are going to be, physical, nasty, going to be looking to get a good push in the run game. But with Chuks Okorafor on that left side, I haven't seen it yet. And, hopefully Clem can work that into him. But at the same time, it's been 3 years, and I have no idea if he's going to be able to flip that switch, quote unquote, in year 4.
Tom, you want to take a stab?
Sure, yeah. My primary concern is the center position. No matter who's going to start there, he's got to be the one that's going to lead this group and bring them all together. You have essentially 5 new starters on the offensive line. I know Banner had 1 start there, but he was out the rest of the season. So, and he also, he's got to have a relationship with Ben Roethlisberger as well and make sure they're working well together. So whoever ends up starting there is going to be the key piece to, set the blocking schemes and be the controlling piece in the middle of that offensive line. So that's what concerns me the most. For a secondary concern, I'll go with Zach Banner's knee. On the right side, he's often going against the weak side pass rusher, the best pass rusher on the other team. And is he going to have confidence in that knee going forward? And to be able to, get into his sets and not have to think about it and just react, without thinking and just play the game the way it's supposed to be played. So, a lot of guys that come back from those injuries, they kind of are tentative at the beginning. So it'll be key watching him and see how he goes early on in camp.
Daniel?
It doesn't make for great radio to agree with somebody else, but I have to completely echo everything Jonathan said. I'm not worried at all about the interior of the line, and if Zach Banner stays healthy, to Tom's point, I'm not worried about him either. Chukwuma Okorafor, one of these things is not like the others along that projected line, and he is very clearly the outlier. He does not fit the physical mentality. And let's not forget, when Banner went down, he got a chance to audition as a starter for a full season last year. He was bad. He was one of the worst graded tackles in football. And he just showed that he wasn't ready to handle it. Hopefully a move to left where he played in college will awaken the spark and the kind of play that got him drafted on day 2. But right now, he is the weak link for the Steelers on that line at the most crucial position. Projecting Ben Roethlisberger in his final season when one hit from his blind side knocks him out and forces Mason Rudolph in for 15 games. That is a scary proposition.
Alex and I have already, and I know Jonathan's jumped in there, and I think a few of you, or all of you by now, probably have seen a pretty good portion of Trey Turner tape right now. Look, the 2020 version of Trey Turner, to me, just throw that film out, man, because A, it was bad. B, he had the groin injury. I think a better look is maybe 2019 Trey Turner, even though he was dinged up in there as well too. This guy went unsigned for a long period of time here, and went unsigned for a long period of time, probably for a reason on top of it. Obviously, the Chargers cut bait with him pretty quick in the off season because of the kind of money he was scheduled to make. He ended up signing a 1-year deal with the Steelers for $3 million there. What version? Do you think there's a chance that the Steelers can at least maybe get, early 2019 version or of Trey Turner this year? And if so, is that enough? I mean, even 2019 tape as a whole. Look, there's good portions of tape for him for 2019. Just almost like you would find any player. You can go pick out the highlights there. I think that the thing is there is the overarching big picture when it comes to Trey Turner, and not once again, not just his 2020 tape, but his 2019 tape. I really think you got to go back to 2018 to kind of find a Trey Turner that was worth, I don't know, $8, $9, $10, $11 million or so. Give me your just quick overarching thoughts on Trey Turner, and can they get by with him if he stays healthy?
Yeah, I think, it's hard to judge a guy year over year, especially after the injury last year. You kind of hope for the best in this situation because, you're pulling somebody off of a pile that nobody really wanted. So you got to hope, as long as he stays healthy, I think he'll be serviceable in that position.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. So what I did when I was going through my film room was kind of watching like, okay, what were the things that really hampering him in 2020? And, what's the difference in terms of his 2019? And while his 2019 film is very up and down, much like you have suggested, Dave, with your analysis of him, I kind of look at just the mechanism of his injuries sustained in 2020 and why that really slowed him down. Obviously, with the groin injury, like if you've ever had it where you're working with athletes in sports performance, like I have, when an athlete suffers a groin strain or a severe groin strain, that is severely debilitating, especially when athletes have to shuffle, push off side to side. So I can understand why he missed so many games and why even when he came back into games, he was still very struggling just because that groin was still not given that time to heal. You also look at, he was dealing with an ankle injury during training camp leading up to the beginning of the season. So you couple that with the actual groin injury that he sustained, as well as a concussion he sustained at the end, near the end of the season. I mean, you're dealing with a guy that's just kind of on his last legs in terms of not just being able to recover and being forced kind of back into the lineup when he wasn't healthy and he wasn't right. So I don't know if you can say that you can give Trey Turner a pass on 2020, but at the same time, I think that we have to evaluate him based off of his 2019 and maybe even closer to his 2018 film and kind of go from there. And that's a player, while he does have those ups and downs, I do think that he was the best option out there at the time for the Steelers to pick up. And I think that based off of what Clem is trying to do and what Canada is trying to do, implementing more zone scheme running, being able to get guys out in space and just create an overall physicality and an overall nastiness with that offensive line, that Trey Turner can fit that very, very well going forward. So obviously I think that there might be some issues going forward in terms of consistency compared to David DeCastro. But I mean, we saw what David DeCastro was trying to go through last year when he was dealing with injuries in his own right. So I don't know how much of a drop off there would actually be between DeCastro in 2020 and Turner in 2019. I mean, I expect there to be some, but I don't know if it's going to be that apparent based off of what we've seen thus far with DeCastro dealing with what he dealt with last year.
Daniel, tell me what you know about Trey Turner.
I kind of disagree with Jonathan. I think you can give him a pass on. Started at least 13 games every season and was playing like one of the better guards in football. And then you pair a lingering injury throughout all of 2020 with his just horrible anomaly of a year. I think that he deserves at least one pass in a few weeks this season to see if, all right, was 2020 something of actual substance, or did your injury just bother you and mess you up in the head for the rest of the year? So I don't think he's making a Pro Bowl again. I don't think he's going to match what David DeCastro could do. But when I look at Trey Turner and their circumstances surrounding 2020, I think he can rebound from that, and maybe he is a dark horse for a potential Pro Bowl nod or a alternate fill-in if somebody else declines, something of that nature. So I'm not too worried about it. If he can stay healthy, I think the Steelers have themselves a more than adequate replacement at right guard.
All right, true or false here for each of you. But by the end of the year, we will be talking, basically the running game versus last 2 years. The running game will be considerably better in 2021 than it was in both 2020 and 2019.
True.
I got 3 trues there. Is this the fact of it's got to be better because it can't get much worse?
A little bit, yes, yeah. I would say. I think that you look at the fact that it's been so bad. I mean, 84 yards per game on the ground at the end of the year, and just how, I mean, we look at it, it was very productive at the beginning of the year. We had James Conner ripping off 100-yard games at the beginning of the year. Benny Snell almost had a 100-yard game against the Giants week 1. And I mean, it was looking good, but just at the point of where we ended up abandoning the run altogether and just going with the dink and dunk passing game. And I think that's a little bit on just the offensive system, especially with Big Ben, you know, with the knee injuries that he kind of sustained, dealing with that in the Dallas Cowboys game going forward, you know, just being able to implement back play action. Hopefully his body's feeling better than it was halfway through the season last year. It's not going to be amazing with him being 39 years old, but I think that the offensive system is going to have to help. But at the same time, we have more aggressiveness up front. We have a new system with overall zones concepts, trying to get guys in space, trying to get guys up to the second level of the defense. We have a lot of younger guys, because as good as Alejandro Villanueva and David Castro and Marquise Pouncey have been for several years, we can look at that Browns game in a couple games at the end of the year and just kind of be like, these guys were kind of shells of their former selves from what we knew them to be. So it was almost like what everyone has been said. It was a little bit of an end of an era. So it'll be interesting to see what the young kids can do going into 2021. But then obviously the game changer is having a caliber of back like Najee Harris in the backfield, who can create for himself outside of what is blocked for him, and can also do more in terms of running through contact, being to evade contact as an elusive runner, and then going forward just as a receiver out of the backfield as well.
Yeah, Najee has to be one of the first names that get mentioned. If you're going to mention James Conner being the reason the team struggled the last 2 years, you have to mention the guy that got drafted in the first round against the modern grain to come in and save this running game. But Jonathan already gave Najee some love. I want to give Anthony McFarland some love, because Matt Canada made McFarland look like a star in college. This guy looked like, I thought he could have been a starter. And now to pair them together in the NFL and get somebody who brings the speed and the home run ability that, no offense to Najee, he's not winning a foot race against McFarland. So I think you get McFarland in there as the sneaky speed component. Najee can wear the defense down, and then McFarland might be able to rip off a big one or surprise some people as an overlooked option. So I think Matt Canada and he are going to make some magic on offense this year and work in perfect tandem with what Najee brings as the obvious bell cow and perfect consummate Steelers back.
Yeah, and there's an attitude change, it seems like, with the offensive line. And I think if you poll offensive linemen, they'd much rather run block than pass block. They want to impose their will on people and just run people over. And I think that attitude is going to help the running game a lot. And like these guys said, Najee's going to make a huge difference.
I'll tap on to what Daniel said when it comes to a guy like Anthony McFarland. Look, you're talking to a guy here in myself that contextualized a lot of his touches, especially his freshman season when Canada was there at Maryland. I have no issue with getting a guy like McFarland his touches and all. Here's the thing, and I said this years ago when it came to guys like Dree Archer and Chris Rainey and stuff like that. In order to make McFarland more effective when the football is in his hands, you have to set aside instances when he's on the field where the football doesn't get in his hand, because you can't here comes Anthony McFarland. You cannot tip your hand into the game. Goes Anthony McFarland. He's going to get the touch this time. You see what I'm saying there? So I think part of what Canada is tasked to do, really with any running back not named Najee Harris here this year, is to make sure he gets them on the field enough where the opposing defense is not sitting on him potentially getting the football there. Somebody might have to mute there when I hear some background noise there or something. But anyway, that's my point when it comes to Anthony McFarland there. All right, I'm going to try to trip you guys up here when it comes to, we talked about the offensive line here and degree of concern and all like that. On a scale of 1 to 10 with the offensive line, with 10 being, oh my God, it's DEFCON, whatever the worst DEFCON is. Where are your concerns on this offensive line as we sit here today, with 10 being, oh my God, I can't stand it, it's so bad?
Anybody want to jump in there first? I don't really see it. I see it as a positive. We went from a line that was honestly breaking down pretty much across the board, and you've got some new blood in the middle. You've got they've gotten much younger. They're hungry to finally get their chance to be starters. So I think they're going to come together nicely, and I think they'll. My concern would be maybe I don't know, a 4 right now. So
a
it'd be
4.
pretty low.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Jonathan and Daniel.
I would say maybe kind of like dead down the middle in 5, because much like kind of what Tom was saying, the old offensive line was kind of breaking down. The guys were getting long in the tooth, and it was kind of about that time for a changing of the guard, kind of as you could say it, so to speak. Obviously, we wanted to ride this thing out as long as we possibly could, but we kind of pushed it up in terms of how long these guys could go together as a unit. I also look at it. I recently did a study comparing the past Super Bowl participant teams for the Steelers over the last several years. And obviously the line 2005, when they played the Seattle Seahawks, that line had a lot of very big names on it with the likes of Alan Faneca and Marvell Smith and whatnot. But then you go back to the Super Bowl winning team in 2008, 2009 versus the Arizona Cardinals, or more specifically, the offensive line that they rolled out after all the injuries against Green Bay in the Super Bowl. I look at this offensive line, and even just guys that I look at just where they are as prospects or where they are at right now, or even guys like Trey Turner and what they have done. And I could say almost confidently that I would take this offensive line versus what they rolled out in those games where Big Ben was literally running for his life. So I think that I would take the upside and the overall aggressive nature of this offensive line and count on Coach Canada and Coach Clem to get them right, rather than rolling with the groups that we had in the late 20s or the early 2010s, and before we had the offensive line that we've had for the last several years. And I think that this group is a good group to start forward with. I think there's a lot of good young pieces that are going to develop into longtime starters. And obviously they're going to continue to look at draft and free agency to continue to build on this offensive line. But I think it's at the starting point of something that could be really good down the road.
And you gave it a 5, right?
Yeah, I gave it a 5. All
right, Daniel, can I get a 6?
You can do one better, Dave. I'm giving myself a 7 for my level of concern with this line right now. It's a line can have a lot of good foundational pieces of people who might become long-term starters, but they're not there right now. I'm looking at it strictly based on what's coming up in 2021, and I see a group that I need to see a little more out of and a little more cohesiveness out of in training camp, especially bringing in Trey Turner late to the process. Okorafor, not somebody I'm really confident in handling left tackle. Trey Turner, is he going to stay healthy? How is he going to pick up Adrian Clem and what the Steelers want to do at right guard? Right tackle, Zach Banner. You looked good in training camp last year. You got hurt the first game. What are you going to do to make sure you stay on the field at right tackle this year? The depth is not there on the outside to handle a tackle position if either player gets hurt there. Inside, I'm not worried. I think Kevin Dotson is a decade-long starter for the Steelers. I think whoever wins the center job is going to handle it fine. And I think whoever doesn't win the center job is capable of starting and doing well at either guard position if the need arises. But those tackles have me so concerned. I have as 7. It can go higher or lower depending on what we see out of him in training camp and the level of confidence Alex says in all of his reports about what they're doing on the field.
All right, so I got a 4, 5, and a 7 there. I mean, that's quite a swing, really, if you think about it with you three guys there. So I think it's really obviously none of us really know because there's not enough tape on any of these guys to draw any other than maybe a core for. But even he's switching sides here. It's going to be one of these things where we're going to get into week 3, and I know you guys are going to be breaking it down. Alex and I be breaking it down as well too. It's one of those. It's more one of those. Am I correct to say that mostly it's going to be spoken about in a negative connotation, the offensive line between now until we actually see something?
Until they can prove that they're able to handle it, I think the general assumption from everyone's going to be this line's unproven and not quite able to live up to what the last lines have been.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
all right.
At least into the first couple of weeks of the season, too.
All right. What other concerns? Moving along to we've spent enough time on offensive line there. What other concerns, if any, do you have about the Steelers' offense? It really seems like that the offensive line, the question marks, what's going to happen there? Yeah, I mean they're returning. More than likely they're going to have the same 5 wide receivers that they had last year, and obviously Matt Canada, he wasn't the offensive coordinator, but he was there. So look, these guys should have a pretty good idea, including Ben. And look, I realize more motion. It's probably schemed up a little bit different here. I'm probably going to see some more switch route combinations, or at least I hope so. More emphasis on maybe some outside zone when it comes to the running game. Is there any one area other than the offensive line that you guys that each of you guys probably scratch your head and say, "Oh man, I don't know about this"?
I'll jump on this one, Dave. So I'm kind of concerned in terms of how Ben is going to progress year 2 off of his shoulder injury, and making sure that we truly leave the dink and dunk passing as a thing of the past behind us, and truly try and take more shots downfield to really try and stretch defenses.
But he really did take a high number of shots downfield. Now that was more than 20 yards, mind you.
Yes.
I think maybe and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think maybe what you're maybe insinuating here, and it would be the thing that I'm kind of insinuating here, is I need to see more shots, more between 5 to 12 yards down the field, maybe, as opposed to, look, he's got to get better connecting on a deep ball, but he kind of has been who he is anyway in that completion percentage for several years now. I don't think we can all of a sudden expect Ben Roethlisberger to be 45% on balls 20 or more yards down the field. However, I think we could see an uptick in average depth of target as a whole, talking about 6 to 16 yards down the field, and him making a difference in that area of the field. Is that maybe what you're meaning by pushing or by putting the ball down the field more?
Yes, that, and also the fact, like, we're looking at early passing downs when they decide to pass the ball early. Like, I think it was an interview with Marlon Humphrey from the Ravens where he was basically saying, like, I knew exactly where the ball was going every single time, and they were just undercutting routes because they were just going to allow everything that happens deep, whether that be 10, 15, 20 plus yards down the field. They were basically playing everything in front of them and allowing to have anything behind them. And that's where Ben needs to be able to improve his accuracy and being able to improve that completion percentage in that middle to, farther end down the field. So that needs to happen, but also being able to just have more route concepts. Like when we talk about the usage of Juju Smith-Schuster, being able to use them on, the outside fade or the deep over route, making sure that we actually have guys, run down the field, being able to get yardage instead of having everyone on the simple drag or the simple check down route in the flat. And, getting the ball out quick, because it's not the fact that Ben can't complete those passes down the field or he's not going to attempt them, because he can attempt them. But it's this idea that, he needs to get the ball out quick because he's afraid to get hurt, whether it be the shoulder or the elbow or whether it be the knees or whatever it is. And that can be a concern with the offensive line going into 2021 in terms of pass protection. But that's something that has to be addressed. And that's something that concerns me in terms of, okay, is he really this afraid to get hit, just because of his body wearing down on him? And is that a reason why the ball was coming out so fast all the time and during 2020, and why they were taking so little dink and dunk instead of actually taking shots downfield? Because he would take shots downfield, but just seemed like, especially on early passing downs or when they were trying to pass the ball early, if it was not like 3rd and long, a lot of it was like quick game, just trying to get the ball out in 2 or under 2 seconds.
I mean, if you go back to it, look, there's articles I've written on the site that Ben's been dink and dunk for a while now. I mean, and I'm not just talking, 2020. I'm talking 2018. And look, Todd Haley is responsible maybe for extending Ben's career by get the football out so quick. Has Ben maybe become kind of too used to that? Because look, now it looks like it's either Ben gets that ball out in 2.3 seconds, or they max protect and he goes deep down the right or left hand side more than 20 yards. It looks like there's no kind of in between of Ben. In fact, I'd be curious to know how, and I could pull the data, is how often, what percentage of the time is he holding onto the football and not going down the field 20 yards. Anything thrown under 19 yards, how many times is he holding the football over, let's say, 3.2 seconds or something like that? I think that's the biggest area of the game where he has got to pick up, is more of the intermediate throwing. And obviously, I think that they run the football better. Look, we know how Ben is when it comes to these deep passes. If you give him one-on-one press coverage on the outside against the cover one look, I don't care if it's 3rd and 1, 1st and 10, 2nd and 1. He's going to take that shot. And, we'd obviously like to see him can complete on a little bit higher percentage there. But I think that we've got to see more of the 7 to 14-yard Roethlisberger, and that probably means holding on to the football just a tad bit longer. Any other two guys want to jump in and talk about concerns other than offensive line on the offense?
Yeah, I'll jump in with the predictability of the offense, especially with the guys that aren't their starters. When Ray McLeod came in, you were gonna see motion, and it was either a fly pass or a screen pass to him behind the line of scrimmage. When James Washington went in motion, they didn't throw it to him or give it to him once, so defenses didn't even have to worry about that. McFarland ran a lot of the same plays, either left or right. Defenses, when they see these other guys come in the game, they have an idea what's going to happen, and the Steelers need to move away from doing that.
And in case everybody listening doesn't know, Tom charts our offense, so he charts every play. So I mean, he obviously Alex and I and others have probably picked up on that stuff. But if anybody knows that kind of stuff, it's Tom, because he charts these games throughout the season. There, Daniel, your turn.
I'm just concerned about, and it's kind of ties into all of that, transitioning from what the offense was to what it's going to be under Matt Canada, because he can't implement a completely new system, a new scheme, everything, because Ben Roethlisberger isn't going to learn everything new in his final season. That's not something a Hall of Fame quarterback's going to do. So I want to see how well, with limited implementation of changes, the entire offense can do trying to run all this stuff as a cohesive, seamless unit. Thus far, the results seem to be pretty good. Canada was all about versatility in all of his interviews during minicamp, and I want to have all the receivers be able to play every different line. I want to see running backs who can do a little bit of everything. It sounds like it's an exciting offense, but I want to see how it looks on the field and not on the field at training camp. I want to see how they match up in preseason and then honestly into week 1 and see, are these changes something that are actually taking root and this team is capable of running, or is it something they're going to have to kick the can down a road a year until they can get a new quarterback in who's able to learn these as somebody younger with a lot of years left?
It all sounds absolutely fantastic during the offseason, doesn't it?
It sounds exciting.
Attack, aggressive, a level of violence, motion, too tight. Boy, I don't know how they're going to do it. They're evidently going to run a lot of 11 personnel and a lot of too tight end sets. So maybe Matt Canada's found a way to get 14 guys on the field at one time here. But yeah, I think you're right there. Look, I mean, we're obviously all supposed to get excited this time of year, but how many other fan bases are doing the same when their offensive coordinator comes out and says, we're going to be a lot more aggressive unit this year. We're going to run the ball. We're going to run it success. They're all saying that. So until we see it. All right. We ranked the offensive line as far as where it is on the concern meter, and who was the lowest? Who had Tom had the 4, I think.
Yep.
Jonathan had the 5, and Daniel, I believe, had the 7. Now, give me a number based on just the offense as a whole, as we sit here right now. Jonathan, you control the board.
All right. Overall offense, I would just say just having everything come together. I would probably say I want to be I'm going to say 6. I'm going to say 6 overall. So just a little bit more concerned than the overall offensive line, just trying to put the whole unit together. I think that you could make the justification for being around a 7 or an 8, but I do think that when you do have an experienced quarterback like Big Ben, where they're going to still implement some old stuff, much like the other guys have been saying, but at the same time, they're putting more of a twist with it, with Matt Canada and having pre-snap motion, having more zone system running in there. I think that it's just a matter of making sure that everything gels together. And that's where that concern can come forward. So I think, much like as these guys have pointed out, like maybe the first 3 to 4 games of the year, you're going to see kind of some sloppy play overall. But I think once they start to get their feet underneath them and actually having a preseason this year, to be able to go through it for multiple weeks, especially with guys like whether they do a dress rehearsal game or if they have it where they rotate, like in guys that are going to be in the 2 deep, they're going to see extensive playing time. I think that's going to be a big thing, especially, they might not show everything in this offensive system and they're in the preseason, and they shouldn't. But I do think that having those extra reps, having the extra live action, just being able to kind of test run some things, what works, what doesn't work, what works with our personnel, what can't we do with our personnel based off what Canada wants to do. I think that's going to help the offense adjust sooner rather than later and be able to get their feet underneath them before the midway point of the season. So hopefully it's just an adjustment period for the first few weeks.
All right, I got a 6 from Jonathan there. Tom.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in the offense. You got the veteran quarterback running the show. The skill position players are comparable, with pretty much anybody across the league. I think the drops are going to be a thing of the past. I think they can clean that up. The first quarter of the season is going to be a very similar offense to what we've seen, and the further they go along, they're going to throw wrinkles in there. There's going to be more Canada influence as the season goes on. But I'm pretty confident in what they're going to be able to do. As long as that line holds together, I'm going to put them at a 3.
Wow. Okay. Daniel.
I'm going to drop mine and say the offensive line is a 7 for me. The overall offense is a 5.
Wow.
Because I think it's nothing but good the rest of the way. The Steelers have one of the, in terms of skill positions, best groups in the NFL. When they can run Juju, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool as their top 3, Eric Ebron and Pat Freiermuth as 2 tight ends, and then complement Najee Harris and Anthony McFarland with each other. That is lethal for an offense. And you have Ben Roethlisberger ready to play. He's going to play, I think, a lot better than people give him credit for, because if this is his final season and his mind is made up, he's not going to want to go out with what we saw last year. He's going to want to go out with a season to cap off a Hall of Fame career. So to me, it's going to start and finish on the offensive line and how well all these players can adapt to changes going from Randy Fichtner to Matt Canada. And I think outside of the line, which is still worrying me, everyone else I'm confident in will be able to do their jobs in a new system this year.
All right, I got to throw this stat in here because I don't do well if I don't mention this stat at least once every every 2 podcasts or whatnot. And if you got, and I know most of you, I know Tom knows what I'm going to talk about. Maybe Jonathan and Daniel both know my affection for this stat so far too. It's obviously the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat. That stat takes into account touchdowns, interceptions, sacks, yardage, those kind of things there. And in my opinion, it is a very good measure of what a team can do, especially when it comes to passing the football here. The Steelers last year had a adjusted net yards per passing attempt number really kind of right in the middle of the league at 6.3 yards. Will that number be equal to, greater than, or less than in 2021? Obviously, greater is a better sign for the offense.
Yeah, I'm going to go greater. The offensive staff has heard all the complaining about the offense last year and not being able to, throw the ball in that mid-range. So I think that's going to be a major focus in their changes and trying to get the ball, on, whether it's on crossers or in the middle of the field to whoever. But I think that number is definitely going to go up.
Yeah, I'll agree and say greater as well, but I think it's going to be a modest improvement. There's only so much they can do to upgrade from last year to this year with the pieces they have in place. So I think it'll start off similar to that number and then just slowly get better and better as the season goes on.
Jonathan? Did I lose Jonathan?
I think he's on mute.
He's on mute.
Shoot. All right. Yep. I'm back. So I would agree with. Yeah, I was thinking.
I'm looking at this screen. It looks like y'all are in a jungle here. I don't know. Obviously, I don't have my camera on because I don't have a camera on this thing. But it's got y'all in kind of these. Are you guys seeing the same thing I am on the screensaver here? Okay, yeah. That's weird. I never have seen that. Carry on, Jonathan.
All right. No, I would be in agreement. I'm just looking at the overall usage rates, especially with guys like Deontay Johnson, more specifically Juju Smith-Schuster. And you got to think that kind of regresses back to the mean. So I would agree that your average adjusted yards per passing attempt stat goes up. I don't know how significantly it does. And one thing I actually included in the article when I wrote up the offensive lines in the Super Bowl years, like there's a couple of years where obviously like in 2005, I think they ranked top 5 overall in that stat. But then also in 2008 and then 2010, they're more around the middle of the pack compared to the rest of the league. So I don't know if you have to be in top 5 of the league in order to qualify to get to a Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl for that stat. But I do think that it regresses back more towards the mean, and you do see that stat rise.
Do all three of you think maybe it can at least hit 7? I mean, if it could hit 7 and the running game kind of be as good as what you guys think it's going to be, then I think if you tell me right now that the adjusted net yards per passing attempt number for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2021 is 7.0, and you tell me that this team can have a 52% run success rate or better, I mean, that to me that's enough. Can they hit 7?
I think so.
I don't know. It got quiet there after you, Jonathan.
It'll be close. I'm not sure if I'm ready to say it will hit 7, but I think upper 6s is absolutely what's going to happen at minimum.
All right. Tom, you think it can hit 7.0?
I think that might be a little bit. I'm going to go just a hair below it, like 6.8. I think it's going to be around.
All right, fair enough. All right, that's enough of the offense. Let's switch over to the defense real quick here. I figured we'd end up spending more time on the offense there than we would the defense. Biggest concern for the 2021 Steelers on the defensive side of the football. Whoever wants to jump in first.
Cornerbacks.
Secondary.
Exactly. It is specifically the third cornerback.
Okay.
Because you go losing Steven Nelson, and for anyone who follows me on Twitter, it is 90% Steven Nelson tweets over the last couple of months. Losing him and replacing him with James Pierre, Shakur Brown, Justin Lane, that is a downgrade that is, I think, bigger than any other position on the roster this year. You take a cornerback who is playing like one of the best corners in the football the last 2 years and replace him with somebody who can't handle the third cornerback spot. You're in trouble when you're going to ask him, all right, go defend Jamar Chase on the outside. Go handle Rashad Bateman. Go line up against OBJ and hold him in check for a game. They're, no offense to these guys, and I'm a huge fan of Shakur Brown, they're not ready to do that this year. Steven Nelson is, and it would allow Cameron Sutton to come back inside. So the Steelers, I think, need to take some of that cap space. If it isn't Nelson, get an upgrade in there. Don't give James Pierre, who's probably going to start, a baptism by fire this year when you're in a division that is pretty good with receivers, more so than other people want to give credit to.
Yeah, I'm kind of along the lines of Daniel as well. I look at it for I did a couple of film rooms on James Pierre and Justin Lane specifically. And while I am very high on Pierre and what he can do down the line as an undrafted free agent, experience, let alone experience when it comes to playing the cornerback position, as our friend Owen would probably attest to, is very, very important, especially in terms of overall communication on the back end. Especially when we look back to the Steelers teams of the past where they would have big coverage busts downfield because of a quote unquote lack of communication down the field. And for the last few years, we've actually had a very stable unit in terms of just guys that are able to be consistent, to produce, and are able to keep guys in check for the most part. But now that we lose guys like Mike Hilton and we lose guys like Steven Nelson, you have a lot of question marks there now. Obviously, the safeties look good with Terrell Edmonds and Minkah Fitzpatrick as guys that are long-term starters that can play together. But then at the same time, we're looking at a shuffling like, okay, do they kick Cameron Sutton inside for sub packages in nickel defense and they move James Pierre or Justin Lane out to the outside? Do they have it where they keep Cam Sutton full-time on the outside and then they put the likes of, say, an Arthur Merlette or a Shakir Brown there in the slot at the nickel position? I mean, there's going to be a lot of shuffling going on, and it would be a lot easier for a defense to adjust if they had that stability going forward rather than like this, what Daniel said, a trial by fire, especially with these younger guys that have talent, yes, but at the same time, they're going to have to go through their ups and downs, and that could cost the defense a lot of yards and big plays and potentially cost the team games going forward.
Tom?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, after Sutton and Hayden, the Steelers carried 6 defensive backs on their active roster last year. After Sutton and Hayden, I think you have maybe 150 snaps total between everybody else. There's a big need to at least bring in at least one veteran to help out there from somewhere, whether it's an outside guy or a slot guy. So, going from what we had last year to this year, it's going to be a huge drop off. So unless you're getting a consistent pass rush, on every play, they're going to struggle back there.
And then look, odds are good that what you see is what you get right now, man. I mean, honestly, unless they have a change of heart with Steven Nelson and he wants to come back in and play for the minimum along those lines, I just don't see Shakir Brown, assuming he does make the 53-man roster, I just don't see Shakir Brown getting snaps unless something happens early on. And look, a guy we haven't even talked about was the safety from last year. Drawing a blank, the rookie from last year, Maryland. Brooks, Antoine Brooks Jr. That's a guy that we've heard his name quite a bit during minicamp of potentially maybe being that slot guy. So let me segue this way. If it is what you see is what you get now as far as the roster goes, as far as the defensive backs go, what is your ideal nickel situation? Is it Sutton on the outside and a guy like Antoine Brooks Jr. in the slot? Is it James Pierre on the outside, Justin Lane on the outside, and Sutton moving down inside? Give me real quick what's your ideal situation as it is right now as far as the Steelers when they go into nickel.
So I'll hit on this one first. I recently posted an article about pass coverage versus run support and what you're looking for in your nickel defender. And I highlighted a bunch of different players, like including Antoine Brooks Jr. I highlighted Shakir Brown. I highlighted a guy like Arthur Merlette. And while Arthur Merlette is listed as a safety, I believe, on the Steelers site, he did play a lot of snaps last year for the New York Jets at nickel corner, and he has that experience, I think, also with the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts during his tenure in the NFL. And while he's been kind of more of a journeyman, he's kind of that mix of the best of both worlds, so to speak. When you're looking in terms of run support, the guy is not afraid to put his face to the fan. He is willing to come in and throw his body at you. He will try and chop you down, and I really like his aggressiveness, his overall pursuit in run defense, but also his ability to break on the ball, his ability to change direction, being able to run with receivers and cover in the slot. I kind of like that in terms of an experienced player. He has a lot of snaps underneath his belt. Like much like Tom said, we had like 150, 170 snaps total with everyone else that was on the team. He plays, I think he's played over 400 snaps total over the past 2 years, and over half of that's been at the nickel position. So I think that in terms of having an established veteran start there at least week one at Buffalo, and then maybe have it where we could see, okay, is James Pierre deserving of a larger role on the outside? Okay, then we can kick Sam Sutton in. Or does Shakir Brown shock everyone and as an undrafted free agent show that he deserves snaps in the slot at the nickel position earlier than what we predicted? Then you can go ahead and factor him in. But overall, you want to have that experience and you want to have that player that's more well-rounded. And that's where I would see if we can see what going forward into training camp, whether or not Arthur Millette does get a little bit of time there in the nickel position, because that's the way I would go based off of the play style of Arthur Millette.
So you'd go Millette in the slot, Cameron Sutton opposite Joe Hayden.
Yes, sir.
All right. Daniel or Tom?
I think it'd be good if you can get Cameron Sutton back on the inside, just because, not because he can't play on the outside, but because he was really good on the inside. Why try to fix what isn't broken? Right now, he has to be on the outside because I think he's the best option to take away some of the other team's best outside receivers. But right now, the options don't exist, so you have to find somebody else who can play in the slot and replace Mike Hilton. I'm not sure I see anybody on the roster who really brings the complete package right now that I would feel comfortable playing them. Antoine Brooks and someone we haven't said yet, Lamont Wade, I think could replicate a lot of Hilton's ability at the line as a blitzer, going in and supporting against the run. But then you've got guys like another one we haven't mentioned, Trey Norwood, who I think brings some coverage abilities that would do very well at the nickel. But right now, I don't see, if I was going to force somebody in there, I'd probably put Sutton inside and put James Pierre on the outside. But right now, I think the Steelers are still missing somebody who could be one of those three main cornerbacks for the team.
Tom?
Yeah, someone is going to have to incredibly ball out to step up and have the defensive coaching staff confident enough to put him in on the inside. Right now, I think they'll go with what they're comfortable with and move Sutton to the inside and put Pierre on the outside. And I think that would be the best way to start it out initially. If you know, like I said, I would try and add a veteran because, like Daniel said, I don't think there's someone who fits that Mike Hilton role perfectly right now. So I think Sutton to the inside and Pierre on the outside would be the way they go.
I will be absolutely shocked if a guy like Shakir Brown, Trey Norwood, any of these rookies, if they're getting snaps with this defense in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, something's gone horribly wrong. And really, to that note, if they get time after that, then something's probably already gone wrong in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season that you need to get those guys on the field to kind of see what they have. And I'm not convinced that this team's going to add another, cornerback moving forward. But, stranger things obviously have happened. We'll see how the final cutdowns go and see just how active maybe Kevin Colbert. But I really think it is what you see is what you get right now with the depth chart there. All right. Outside, pretty much you all are agreeing that secondary is a huge concern here. Let's try to move this along here to kind of start wrapping this show down here. What is your second biggest concern when it comes to this defense?
I would probably say outside linebacker depth behind T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. You look at right now, we have a journeyman in Cassius Marsh who has some pass rush production with his time with the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers and the couple other teams that he has played with. But you look at overall his ability to play the run and just how you could kind of see that they were really targeting him, especially in that wild card game when he was subbed in versus the Cleveland Browns. He was just easily driven off the ball, just doesn't have the say in the pants to be able to hold up and keep outside contain and just gives up a lot of ground in the run. And then we have a promising rookie player in Quincy Roche, who we all agree was a value pick in the 6th round, being more of a day 2 kind of guy. But at the same time, this is a rookie that has played a little bit with his hands in the dirt as well as a stand-up position, but he's more of a projection player. And to ask him to play anywhere from 10 to 15 snaps a game consistently, especially when you're looking at offensive lines like the Ravens and the Browns just in the division, that's a lot to ask for, especially for a rookie making that transition to the league. So if it was me, I would look at, obviously we could say corner is a big need that they could look at in free agency. I would almost be more encouraged to look at the edge rusher position in free agency, especially with the names still available that are free agents, as well as those that could possibly be acquired via cut downs, with what Tom has highlighted in his video or his article, and what we've kind of talked about with Chase Winovich going forward as just a solid depth piece that could be that player behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith to provide depth there that could be solid against the run, as well as generate a solid pass rush for a defense that will sorely miss Bud Dupree.
Tom and Daniel, either one of you want to go outside of outside linebacker depth, or is that where you guys stand as well too?
I think it's overall depth. Tom, do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
I think it's overall depth because Jonathan just went over very well the issues the team has behind Highsmith and Watt at outside linebacker. Inside, you have a lot of options, but are any of them capable if Devon Bush gets hurt or social media spirals out of control somehow? Are any of them capable of stepping up to be the green dot, to be the defensive captain? Spillane showed flashes, but I'm not sure he has it all. Vince Williams, I'm not sure at this stage in his career he has it all. Buddy Johnson, I think, has some development to do before we can see if he has it all. And then you look in the secondary, we've already gone over cornerback at length at how things get pretty thin after Hayden and Sutton. At safety, things get pretty thin after Minka and Terrell Edmonds as well, because it's a lot of the same names that we already discussed at the cornerback position who are going to have to step up at safety if one of them goes down. And that's not even factoring in that Terrell Edmonds, not the best coverage guy when it comes to safeties. So I'm looking at overall depth and saying Pittsburgh, if there's any injuries, they kind of have to happen on offense because I'm not sure they've got the defensive pieces to step up and replace a key guy.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, if Bush and Spillane are your starters inside, they've played 8 snaps together so far. You don't know how they're going to play to each other. You got to get reps with each other to understand and, get a feel for which way everybody's going to go. And on top of that, to what Daniel said with the depth, we've got some older or defensive linemen too. So if any of those older guys goes down, can Carlos Davis step up? Can, Buggs step up? I'm not sure that one of those guys are ready.
All right, let me go this way in kind of a rating system here. Are you more concerned about the offense making a step forward in progress, or the defense taking a step backwards in 2001? Which thing worries you the most? And the answer cannot just be yes.
I think it's definitely the defense. Losing the 2 players in the defensive backfield is huge, and this game's all about passing now. So I think the defense taking this step back is what I'm more worried about.
I'll say offense to offer another argument because there's so many good guys on defense. The defensive line isn't going to play at anything other than an all-pro level with the group they have. There's enough good players in the second level and in the secondary that even if some players aren't doing their best, the defense should still be able to play at a fairly high level so long as Bush, Minka Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden, Cameron Sutton stay healthy. Offense, there's a lot more injury concerns. The offensive line is almost completely new at starting for Pittsburgh and at the NFL level. And Ben Roethlisberger coming off that injury recently, you're going to always worry about him, even if he showed last year he can stay healthy. So, and bringing in a new offensive coordinator, there's a lot more that concerns me in terms of variability on offense than on defense.
Yeah, see, I initially thought that I was going to say offense to this question, but then kind of going over the fact that, we talked about the offensive line play last year. We talked about how porous the run game was, especially at the end of the year. It's like we always talk about, could it get any worse? And, we could see it stagnate and kind of be the same thing. But I think that we can overall expect an improvement in the offense as a whole, let alone in the run game, which is going to be able to alleviate some pressure off of the passing game. So I think overall as an offense, it takes a step forward. And that's where you have to really look at the defensive side of the ball. And while you have it where we have a bunch of studs on the defensive side of the ball, much like what Daniel was saying, where's the depth or where's the glue guys that kind of make up that defense? Because obviously we lose the likes of Mike Hilton and also Steven Nelson on the back end. You have a bunch of guys that have never really played before or only have recorded less than 100 snaps trying to vie for a starting position on the defensive back. And you have guys like Bud Dupree who have been big, steady contributors as good but Robin to TJ Watt's Batman. And now you have a guy like Alex Highsmith who has shown well in his playing time. But at the same time, we are projecting him to take a massive step forward. And we need him to take that step forward in order to justify having that guy as our full-time edge rusher on the opposite side of TJ Watt. So that's where, okay, if he doesn't take that step forward, you need to have that depth at outside linebacker, right? But we don't have a really sure thing as depth at outside linebacker. So, and then you have the questions with Devon Bush coming off the ACL, whether or not Vince Williams still has it, whether or not Robert Spillane could be a full-time starter, Buddy Johnson's overall development, whether or not, Marcus Allen, Ulysses Gilbert could contribute in any way at inside linebacker. Overall, I would say the defensive line you could be pretty confident about with the top three, and then the overall young depth, but they have guys that can come in and contribute. I mean, as long as you don't lose, knock on wood, a Stephon Tuitt or a Cam Hayward for the whole year, you have guys that can come in and contribute and give those guys a breather from my mind. But you look at the outside linebacker, you look at inside linebacker, you look at depth in the secondary, you look at guys that contribute in the nickel and the dime packages. I just think that we might see a lot more big plays given up by the defense, which is going to put more pressure on the offense to score points and get yards. And I think that we can expect the offense to take that step forward. But I do think that we might see some more struggles and by the defense, maintaining going forward into 2021.
My answer to that question, by the way, is yes.
That's a cop-out, Dave.
Me cop-out? I don't do that. You guys know better than that. It is a big yes for me. I'm worried about I'm worried about the offense being able to take enough of a step forward to cover the step backwards that I do think the defense. I think there's fair arguments. I don't think there. Basically, I'm trying to say I don't think there's a wrong answer to that really, because I think it's okay to question whether or not the offense can take a big enough step forward here. And I also I think it's fair to think and to expect that this defense will take to some degree a step backwards, from what we saw last year. Look, they put up an adjusted net yards per passing attempt number of 4.7 last year, second best in the league, only to the Los Angeles Rams. I will be stunned. I mean, somebody needs Coach of the Year award from the Steelers of some sort if they get this number even 5.2 or lower. I think in 2021. Heck, right now I'm wondering maybe if can they get it to. I think 5.5, 5.7 is low enough as long as the offense takes that step forward to say the 7 that we talked about there. And I hate to measure it just all off passing stats, but make no mistake about it. At some point during an NFL season, you're going to have to throw the football. And this 2000, as good as the run I think can possibly be, or the success rate be with this 2021 offense, sooner or later you're going to have to throw the football and do it successfully enough in order to win a high amount of games here. And I just wonder if they're going to be able to do that. All right, to wrap things up, and because we're probably going to have you guys on either individually or collectively before the 2021 season goes over, I don't want you to shoot your whole shot right here, but just from where you sit right now, we're not going to get into records, we're not going to get into anything else, but just from where you sit right now, the current makeup of this 2021 Steelers team, do they have enough? Will the 2021 Steelers make the playoffs? Plain and simple. That's the question that you got to answer.
I'd say yes.
Wow, that's dumb.
That's a lot of dead air, man. That's bad editing. That's a bad editing job by Dave Dead Air. Right there.
I think it's a pretty clear yes.
You think they do?
Agree.
Okay.
I would agree. Yes.
Okay, Tom.
I'm gonna go no. There's at least 2 teams in every division who are comparable or better than Pittsburgh, so I think it's going to be a tough road to make the playoffs.
All right, do they? Let me ask you this: the AFC North. will any team have less than 2 divisional losses in the AFC North?
I think it comes down to whether or not the Browns are for real. I think that you look at the Baltimore roster, and while you can say like, okay, they had a good draft, they had some good pieces, I think their losses, especially at outside linebacker and pass rush, I think that the losses on defense, the aging of their key players, I think that, you're hoping that Lamar Jackson can take a step forward as a passer. But, I mean, they also had some losses on that offensive line, still trying to get over the loss of Marshall Yanda up front. I think that the Baltimore is kind of in the same boat a little bit as Pittsburgh in terms of, it's been Baltimore and Pittsburgh at the top for the longest time, but both teams have suffered some key losses on their roster and are trying to cover up some key weaknesses, especially with Baltimore's lack of a pass rush with their outside linebackers, much like Steelers in their secondary or Steelers in the offensive line. So I think that there's some key holes there. And you look at the additions that the Cleveland Browns have not only made in the draft and free agency this year, but what they have done over the past couple years. That's a very, very well-built roster from head to toe. And Kevin Stefanski as head coach and Barry as their general manager has done a very good job building this thing the right way. So it's just a matter of if, they have the team, they have the infrastructure, they have the coaching staff, do they put it all together? Especially having that emphasis on the run game, being able to have Baker Mayfield operate as a play action pass quarterback, and then just having the bodies now on the defensive side of the ball to be able to match up with, say, a Baltimore, or match up with, say, a Pittsburgh. There are a lot of young guys, so they have to prove it. But at the same time, I think if there's a favorite to take 2 losses or less in the division, I think that I could say it would be Cleveland. But at the same time, they need to go ahead and do it. And the first time that they played the Pittsburgh in the 2020 season, they got absolutely shellacked. Now they got the better hand of Pittsburgh in the playoffs for a bunch of other reasons that we can all go into detail about, but we probably shouldn't. So I just look at, okay, it's a fresh slate. We saw what happened during the season. We saw what happened at the end of the season. How is that matchup going to happen at the 2021, especially in the middle to end of the year when they're actually going to match up with each other?
All right, so will any team have two or fewer or less than 2 losses in the division? Yes or no? Jonathan?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that Cleveland has the best shot at it just based off of where their team is as a whole. But I would say that just the way that they play, especially in the AFC North, how you can never really count out the Bengals, especially in any matchup with any other team. I think that they're just going to have it where they almost beat the crap out of each other. And
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Exactly.
So 4-2 at best for Cleveland in division, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
All right, Tom and Daniel, any team go 5-1 or better in the division, AFC North?
Not without some kind of major injury to one of the top 2 teams, because Cleveland is for real. They are one of the AFC Super Bowl frontrunners. Baltimore is still very good and has one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the league, which will always keep them in games. Pittsburgh, we've gone over almost every aspect we could about this team so far in the last hour and a half. Cincinnati, I want to give major props to, because I would not be surprised at all to see Cincinnati knock somebody else to last place in the division and finish 500 and maybe even make the playoffs this year. They have built a lot of the foundation of what this team could be. The offense is going to be a lot better than people give them credit for. Joe Burrow is going to come back motivated from an injury to what could have been a Rookie of the Year season. And for all the issues the Bengals still have, they're not going to win a playoff game even if they make it. They are a team who it would not surprise me to see them sweep the Steelers this year or take a game from each of the Ravens and Browns. This division is just going to beat the
snot.
ever loving, snot, you know what, out of each other all season. And I think 4-2, you would be very, very happy to go 4-2 in this division, no matter what team you are.
Okay, now you were one of the 2 though that said that the 2021 Steelers, you're pretty emphatic they make the playoffs. So if Cleveland or if Cincinnati does not finish in the cellar, which is the team most likely to finish in the cellar then?
It's not going to be the Browns. It's going to be the Ravens, the Steelers, or the Bengals. It would not surprise me to see any of them in the playoffs. It would also not surprise me to see any of them in the basement. They all have a wide variability in terms of what their final records could be. So Cincinnati, I think, has the lowest floor. They could still finish with a top 5 pick, but a good season for them, I think, could see them at 500, or since that doesn't exist anymore, one game above 500.
I tried to trip you up there. All right. Tom, take us to the house in the AFC North. Hello, Tom. Okay.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah. I clicked out there for a second. I think 4-2 is the best any team's going to get. You know, it's the road games are so difficult. Baltimore teams have learned how to control Lamar Jackson a little bit, so that's going to make it tougher for them. Cincinnati's offense looks much better than they have in recent seasons. Cleveland is, I think, the strongest team top to bottom, but I liked what Daniel said about the injury. If that happens, then you could see someone go 5-1. But other than that, I think it's going to be a slugfest in there.
All right, good job, guys. Give me each of you 30 seconds here. A final thought on absolutely anything, and make sure to get your Twitter handle out there.
All right, I'll go ahead. I am looking forward to training camp, seeing these guys back, going at it. Looking forward to hearing about the fights going on and, all the updates we're going to get. We missed out on it last year, so it's going to be good to get back to a little bit more of normalcy. And I am TH Mead 3 on Twitter. So
TH Mead 3 on Twitter. All right, Daniel.
Cap space now. With David Castro getting released, the Steelers have cap space to play with. It's not a lot, but at this point in the game, it's more than enough to do some damage on the free agent market and bring in some guys to address key weak spots on the roster. We've already agreed unanimously that they have weak spots, whether it be at cornerback, whether it be at edge rusher. They've got to spend that money. If all these moves were made before DeCastro's release in the name of saving cap space, you've got to spend it now that you've got it. There's big names out there. They could bring in Melvin Ingram to shore up the pass rush. Steven Nelson, Richard Sherman out there at cornerback. Those are the 2 top names. They might not be able to afford them. But there are names below that are still just as worth playing that would be a guaranteed upgrade over a lot of the guys who right now are unproven in their roles. So I don't care what position it is at, but a team who creates that much room like the Steelers did can't just sign Trey Turner and save the rest of the money. You have to use it if you are fully committed to making one last run with Ben Roethlisberger under center. You've got to spend the money to do your best to set yourself up for the best shot at that title.
And your Twitter handle?
Sports Kitchen with 2 underscores between the words.
Sports Kitchen with 2 underscores between the words there. And I'll tell you, like my old man used to tell me, put your wants in one hand and you know what in the other and see which one fills up quick. Look, I get it. They need to address some depth positions here, but I think effective cap space. Look, they can create cap space if they want to. Look, you still got you got this amount of cap space that you have now. You can still restructure the contract of Stephon Tuitt and Chris Boswell. There's ways to go about doing this if they wanted to do it. It's not going to be an over 30 edge rusher unless there's an injury. And if there's an injury, you're back to square one needing depth on top of it. I just think the ship is sailed on Steven Nelson. They're going to add another 1 or 2 players. I just don't think it's going to hit the Richter scale like maybe a lot of people think it might there. But point well taken there, and welcome to the team, Daniel. All right, Jonathan, wrapping us up.
All right, I'm going to go at basically asking and seeing with the offensive side of the ball, like which offensive skill position player takes this step forward. Me and Wes Catcliffe have been talking a lot about the receivers and whether or not one can take the step up, because right now we have a lot of 3 guys that are all very comparable in terms of production. Does Deontay Johnson get those drops under control like we all expect to going into 2021? And with the target share that he's getting from Ben Roethlisberger, if that correlates back from last season to this season, is he able to become kind of like a poor man's version of an Antonio Brown as a very crisp route runner, he's able to bring in more catches and not drop as many passes? Does Chase Claypool take the leap forward in year 2 as a physical specimen on the outside? Does Juju Smith-Schuster rebound closer to the player that he was in year 2 when he posted over 1,400 yards receiving? We have 3 guys that are kind of like that B level receiver. Can we have a guy step up and be kind of that 1A or that A receiver and lead that room? So that's something that I kind of want to see going forward, because that's what's going to really make a defense focus in on a guy. And that's where you're going to see a lot more bracket coverage. And that's going to open up a lot of other things underneath into other receivers and also Najee Harris, and hopefully in the passing game. So also I want to take time to take my stab at a possible free agent signing. So I did a free agent wish list about a month or 2 ago, and I called Malik Hooker as a possible signing for the Steelers. And I want to hopefully make that prediction here before the regular season starts that they do sign Malik Hooker.
You're doubling down, huh?
I'm doubling down, and I'm calling the Malik Hooker call.
Hey, look, if he's willing to, sign for $2 million or less, which is a possibility, I think, at this point now. He's obviously would have to come in and play some sort of reserve role. And look, you cannot be a backup safety on this team and not play some special teams. He doesn't have to be a core guy, but he's going to have to play maybe on the punt protection team or something along those lines, there. So, I don't think it's totally out of the question there. I still think he's best served to wait until training camps get open to see if something around the league happens, maybe with an injury. But I do think it's still. I think a guy like him. I think a guy like Malik Hooker is a lot more plausible than guys like Melvin Ingram and Justin Houston right now. I mean, look, I wrote about it today on SteelersDepot.com. Name for me the last over 30 defensive player that the Steelers have signed for more than a minimum, after the bulk of free agency is hit. And good luck finding me an answer in the last since Kevin Colbert took over. It just does not happen. Now, obviously, if an injury happens to a guy like T.J. Watt or Alex Highsmith, God forbid, well, yeah, you're going to be picking up the phone trying to get who you can. But once again, if that happens, then you're going to be back to square one. Where's your depth behind whichever one's not injured, and the new, Houston, Ingram, whoever it is? I really think you're more apt to see a guy 27, 28. Maybe they trade for a guy like Chase Winovich. Maybe somebody like Ben Banagoo from the Colts gets cut or something along those lines. That's more likely what you see. But to your point on Malik Hooker, of all the names that are kind of out there on quote unquote Steelers Nation's wish list, I think Malik Hooker is probably the most plausible right now because of him and his injury history, because of probably what he's worth right now. Assuming he doesn't find a starting gig somewhere else, I could see him maybe landing with the Steelers. Get that Twitter handle out there, Jonathan.
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is @J_Heights. So Heights is spelled HEITS. So J_Heights.
All right, I was hoping that one or all of you would have taken time to tell me how great I am, but unfortunately none of you did that. But no, in all seriousness, boy, you guys certainly have made this hour and a half very entertaining. Appreciate you guys helping sit in with Alex Kozora out of town here. And once again, we'll probably have you guys on either collectively or individually before the 2021 season starts. So tip of the hat, you guys do tremendous work on SteelersDepot.com. And listeners, make sure you're following these guys. Make sure you're chiming in the comments on the articles these three guys write as well, too. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter @SteelersDepot. You can follow Alex on Twitter @Alex_Kozora. Follow the show @Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Also, if you'd like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com and hit the ad-free button. For $25 for 1 calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of the site. Gentlemen, once again, I appreciate you joining me today. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.